Marcia, would you like to welcome us today?
Sure. I want to welcome everybody to the 8th annual Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman conference. We are certain that the next 2 hours will inspire you, enrich you, and open your mind to pearls of possibility. The conference will include remarks from our co-founder and president, Tara Bellevue, the Women of Today awards, Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman Clubs update, a keynote by Dr. Marsha Young Cantarella, a session on the art of interviewing, a session on pearls of wisdom, a presentation on money is power, and concluding with a call to action and announcing our scholarship winners. Now let me introduce Tara Bellevue, president and co-founder.
Thank you, Marcia, for that introduction. I've shared with you in the chat the Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman conference page, where you'll be able to find our run of show and the bios for all of our speakers. It is my pleasure to share some very exciting news with you today. Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman is officially Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman Incorporated. Yay! 8 years in this journey together with Marcia, which started with me having a bad day at work, coming to speak and have lunch with my mentor. And she asked, how was my day going? And I shared a rough story with my supervisor at the time, who I had pitched this idea. I want to do a conference where I bring professional women in STEM together to have conversations with young women. And he's like, this is a great idea, but not right now. So Marcia said, well, why don't you tell me the idea? And as I'm talking to her and explaining to her my idea, she takes out her paper. And if you know Marsha Iverson, you know she takes out her paper, her pad and her pencil. And she's starting to write. And she's like feverishly writing. I was like, what are you writing? She says, we're about to do this. That was January, 8 years ago. That January, 8 years ago, we made the decision that we were going to make this happen. And 3 months later, March for Women's History Month, Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman was born. At the same year in which her beautiful daughter, Courtney, who's on our logistics team and our consultant, was getting married in Costa Rica. So we were doing all those things. Crazy women, I know. So I'm very excited to share with you, as an incorporation, we have a beautiful board of directors. So I serve as the president of our Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman Incorporated. Marcia Iverson is our chairwoman, and Joan Goldsmith, is a board member, and Emony Robertson is a board member, and she is the director of the TGTW clubs. So without further ado, I'd like to pass the mic to Emony Robertson, board member and TGTW club director.
Hi, everyone. It has been an absolute pleasure to see each and every one of your faces. Thank you, Tara, for the warm introduction. At this time, we will take a minute to really reflect on Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Women's clubs. Tara and Marsha really wanted to make sure that we were continuously engaging with each of you. And so some of our core values that we have tried to work with your teachers and with some of you include respect, sisterhood, community building, forward thinking, college and career readiness. But what we're getting ready to get into is to now highlight some of the virtual speaker series and feedback from one of your colleagues. And what we found is we were able to focus on college and career readiness through the virtual speaker series. So we want to thank you all for participating. And at this time, we're also going to take a quick look at a video reflecting on what an experience it was.
Hello. Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman is inspiration to me. It's motivation to achieve each and every one of my goals. During the speaker series, I learned that I can use all my resources to achieve my goals. That if I can do anything if I put my mind to it. Seeing all these determined women who achieve their goals gives me inspiration that I can do it too.
Well, thank you all for looking at that reflection. Sheena, we're grateful that you felt that way, and we're hoping that many of you who are now conference attendees also enjoyed our TGTW virtual club series. Now, at this time, Marcia, please give an introduction to our keynote speaker and your classmate, Marcia Young Cantarella.
Marsha Young Cantarella has had a long and varied career, as many, many women do. After earning her college degree at Bryn Mawr College and a master's and doctorate from NYU, Marsha was the director of public affairs for Avon Products. She took her administrative experience and skills to the university level at various colleges, assisting students at all levels in a variety of areas. She is the author of I Can Finish College, the Overcome Any Obstacle and Get Your Degree Guide. And it's in a second reiteration at the moment. In addition, she is the co-director of Hunter College's Black Male Initiative. And today will bring her expertise to all of us, women of tomorrow and today. On a personal note, Marsha was a classmate of mine at New Rochelle High School. So amazing to reconnect with people after so many years. Marsha is a civil rights activist carrying on the work of her father, Whitney Young. With that, I would like to welcome Marsha Young Cantarella.
Hello, all. This is just delightful. I can't begin to tell you what a pleasure it is to be here, and thank God for for all of our technological tools, because Marsha Iverson and I were able to reconnect after decades. I won't even say how many decades it's been, but it's been a lot. And so to be able to find each other and find that we are sharing values and interests and work. One of the things I was asked to talk about is kind of what has inspired me in my work, and so what I want to do today is work through stories. I think stories are really important, and hopefully you'll learn some things through these stories, and be inspired by some of the stories in ways that are helpful to you, as they were to me. So, as Marsha said, my father was the late civil rights leader, Whitney Young, and he was a major change agent. He helped Lyndon Johnson craft the war on poverty. The idea of equal employment opportunity can be laid to him, and became legislation. Programs in the war on poverty, like Head Start and Medicare, came out of a book that he did, To Be Equal, where he talked about an urban Marshall Plan. And so Johnson kind of lifted many of the ideas that he had put forward. He was one of the big six of the civil rights leaders. But he came from an extraordinary family himself. And his father, Whitney Young Sr., ran a school in Kentucky called Lincoln Institute. Now, this was in the 1920s and 30s. The board who created this, with all good intentions, it's a beautiful campus, it's like a college campus, but their intention was that these students would learn how to be, these Black students would learn how to be cooks, and how to be better farmers, and maybe to have some mechanical skills. And fortunately, the board, which was primarily white, wasn't around very often, because behind their backs, my grandfather was running a college prep curriculum. And so, when the board came on campus, the women would go running off and be in the kitchens and be doing the things that the board thought they were supposed to be doing, but that's not what they were doing. My grandmother, who was known as Mother Dear, was just, she was fierce. She made sure that you were well behaved, that you were well mannered. By the time I was 4, I knew how to shake hands with people and look them in the eye. I'd send her a thank you note. I'd get it back corrected. I mean, you did not mess with Mother Dear. But she was also extraordinarily generous, and she went out into the community you know, taking food or clothing or things that people needed for people who just didn't have, whether they were white or black. And so she was highly respected. So then my father, who thought he was going to go to med school ultimately and didn't, but he went to Kentucky State University with both of his sisters, my Aunt Arnita and my Aunt Eleanor. And in terms of women role models, in addition to obviously my grandmother, my Aunt Arnita, when World War II started, she went and had herself learned how to fly a plane. It was taught by the Tuskegee Airmen, so she could fly planes for the Red Cross during the war. Not a lot of women were doing that, and certainly not a lot of Black women were doing what she was doing. And I was always blown away by that. She went and she got a master's degree. She was on the faculty at the University of Chicago. She helped write the Head Start plan. So she was amazing. My role model for when I got my doctorate, which I didn't do right after college. I didn't know what I was going to do right after college. I thought I was going to go to law school and didn't. But I started working on my doctorate in my early 40s. I knew I could do that because my Aunt Eleanor, who had been a librarian, had become part of the faculty and staff at the University of Louisville. And she did her doctorate in her 40s while she was working full-time in an academic institution. And that's exactly what I did. But I knew I could do that because I had seen her do that. She was the first Black dean at the University of Louisville. One of their classmates, who was kind of my godmother, was a woman named Ursa Poston. And Ursa was, Ursa was always, you know, kind of out there and doing things. And my mother, who was very, you know, sort of quiet, but powerful in her own way, as I'll share in a minute. Ursa would sneak out at night and my mother would tell on her. But they remained friends into their 80s. I don't know how they did that. But Ursa ended up serving on the Urban League Board. She was the head of the New York State Civil Service, the first Black woman to do that. When asked to head the federal civil service, she declined under the Nixon administration, and then helped to dismantle the agency when it was found that there were things that weren't going right with it. So she ended up as vice chair of the Federal Merit Protection Board. First Black woman to do that, one of the highest ranking, maybe the highest ranking Black woman in the administration. And she was absolutely, you know, if I had a question about anything, I could go to Aunt Ursa. When my parents were making me crazy, I could go to Aunt Ursa. So these were the women who were just, you know, my role models. That's who I grew up with. So the first piece of advice is to think about who you have in your own lives. Some may be family and some may not be family. My freshman year at Bryn Mawr, a woman named Pat McPherson was what was called the warden of our dorm. That has since been changed, that title. But you know, she was the grown-up in the place. She was the one who was making sure that, you know, we were all well behaved in our dorm. But she went on to be dean and then ultimately became the president of Bryn Mawr. Pat remained a friend and a mentor, and at one point even a colleague. And when I was trying to decide, I had left the corporate world. I had been at Avon doing first corporate responsibility work, which, you know, was something my dad essentially had created. And I did that for about 7 or 8 years, becoming the first, I guess the youngest woman, I mean, the youngest person actually at my level, at the director level at Avon at that time, only because my late husband, my second husband, Francesco, white Italian dude, Francesco, when we were driving on vacation once, he said, he handed me a legal pad and he said, I'm not stopping this car until you start writing the presentation that you need to write to get the promotion that you deserve. So Francesca was always behind me. And so when I reached the point where I was trying to decide whether I'd earned my doctorate, did I want to teach or did I want to remain an administrator? And Francesca kept saying, call Pat. And I kept saying, Pat's really busy. She's running a college. And he kept saying, call Pat. So I did. And Pat told me to call Nancy. Nancy Malkiel had written a biography of my father. She was on the faculty at Princeton. She had moved up to be dean of the college, which I had no idea of. But Pat said, Nancy is a dean and in the classroom. Find out how she does that. Maybe you can do that and you won't have to make the choice. Nancy had a job opening. So I ended up in a deanship at Princeton because I finally listened to my husband saying, call Pat. And Pat ended up also being not just my mentor, but when my stepdaughter went to Bryn Mawr, Pat was the president. So she has been my stepdaughter's mentor as well. But then you can create your own clusters of support. I lost my husband 20 years ago. We had been together for almost 30 years. But there's a little group of us, and all of us have been the second wives to husbands who are powerful or well known. We've all got stepkids, and we're all widowed. And so we get together, periodically. We'll have dinner, or we used to have dinner before COVID. But we're all looking forward to doing it again. But we know each other's lives, right? And so we can talk and vent and share in a way that, somebody else might not get. And so in a similar way, finding your own niche, this is one, your presence here. This organization is absolutely a starting place. But you'll find along the way that there'll be other support groups that you may need. It may be, groups for, I know women who have had cancer circles, or, just kind of other kinds of organizations of people who are similarly situated, who get you, who you don't have to explain what's going on because they've been there too. On the other hand, it can be a reading group, or during COVID, Bryn Mawr has started these craft nights. And so once a month, we get on Zoom, and a bunch of us who do craft things, I do embroidery. We get on together and we talk about what our projects and the progress we've made and our projects and our pets or our kids or whatever. And people come in from all over the world and look forward to this monthly, Zoom crafts group. So, finding people who are part of your tribe becomes really important. And it doesn't matter, in terms of ethnicity, that doesn't matter so much as, are they going to be in your corner? As I said, my husband was Italian American, but his father had faced discrimination in the 1920s when he couldn't get a job as more than a janitor at Jordan Marsh department store. Now, leaping forward many years, Francesco became a senior vice president for Federated Department Stores, and Jordan Marsh was part of his portfolio. So he was a senior vice president in the store where his father had only been able to be a janitor. So, finding your allies, finding people who get you. And I'm going to include me in that. So my email, which I will put in the chat in a minute, is mycantarella@gmail.com. And I invite you to email me if you've got questions about anything, about school, whatever. I remember I talked to a group of students, and this young man, Timothy, sent me this question. What do you do when you're taking a class that's required, but you really don't like it? And I thought that was a great question. And I was doing a lot of blogs at the time. And so I did a blog, and it began with, I got this great question from Timothy. And Timothy was just totally tickled that, you know, there he was in a Huffington Post blog. But yeah, I respond. I listen to you. I want to be part of your support system. I'm going to shift a little bit. I want to talk about the workplace. And, you know, as you heard a little bit, it may not be linear. Mine certainly wasn't. And I think this is absolutely increasingly true. Be prepared to pivot. When I talk to students all the time, they think, you may think, that whatever I sign on to as my major is going to determine the rest of my life, which is absolutely not true. What you sign on to as a major should be something that you enjoy, and enjoy enough to do really well in. So you rock that GPA, right? And you learn basic skills like how to do research and how to write well, and how to think critically, and how to absorb tons of information and process it. Any major is going to give you that, because what's going to happen is, you know, everything around you will change. I started off thinking I was going to law school. I ended up at Avon doing corporate responsibility stuff. Then they moved me into marketing, which, you know, like, why? And then I ended up doing some consulting, and then I ended up doing a consulting project in NYU, and then the launch of the whole academic career. I did not plan that when I when I was an undergraduate. That was not the plan. I was supposed to be a lawyer. And that's going to be true for you. It is increasingly true for everybody. It's not going to be linear. So, you know, you will have to pivot, and you probably will have to pivot often. And there may be a period where your pivot takes you to being self-employed. The other thing that I want to suggest is that you read. In case you haven't noticed, I've got some books behind me. This room, my study, is filled with books. My apartment is filled with books. There are thousands of books in this place. And, you know, when I die, my kids are going to, you know, be furious because they're going to have to deal with these thousands of books. But some of which they have made the mistake of giving me. But read widely, read about politics, follow at least one major newspaper. And you can get it on your phone. You know, I get the Washington Post, you know, online. I take the New York Times paper, like the real paper, on the weekends, and I sit with a pot of tea and I read my New York Times. But then, you know, so at least hit the headlines, know what's going on. Also, read fiction or biography. You absorb language from reading. And so your writing gets better, and that's going to be an incredible professional skill. So, you know, you also just become more interesting to others. You have more to talk about, right? And you know what other people are talking about. And so you can be part of the conversation. You can lead the conversation. You can also get inspired by stories of others. Check out, okay, I'm going to suggest a book. The First Lady and the Firebrand. It's a story of a woman named Pauli Murray. It happens that Pauli Murray was also a friend of my godmother, Ursa Poston's, but Pauli Murray was a Black woman. In the 1920s, she began as an educator. She couldn't find the school she wanted down south, so she moved to New York and went to school in New York. And then the Depression hit. And so then she was kind of doing social work stuff. But along the way, she somehow ran into and became friends with Eleanor Roosevelt. And so they hit it off and, you know, formed a friendship. Pauli Murray then decided that education wasn't cutting it, so she wanted to go to law school. She went to law school. She got her degree in law school, but she wanted to go a step further. She wanted a doctor of laws. Harvard rejected her because Harvard wasn't accepting women in their law school. It wasn't because she was Black. It was because, you know, they just weren't taking women. Yale accepted her. She went on to become a very well-known civil rights attorney. Yale has just named a building for her. But then later in her life, she decided what was wrong with the world had to do with the spirit. So she went back to school and she became a priest, and she became the first African-American female gay priest in the Episcopalian Church. And that was in her 60s and 70s. She was running a parish when she was in her 70s. So, you know, there are these amazing people out there, amazing stories that, you know, within the pages of books that you can find and be inspired by. Another fun thing to read, if you haven't read Teen Vogue, young women, you need to check it out. People think of Vogue magazine as this fashion magazine, right? It's about the clothes and stuff. Not Teen Vogue. Teen Vogue got hijacked by a bunch of young women who wanted to take on issues. And so it has become an activist magazine. One of its former editors, Lauren Dukas, wrote a book called So You Want to Start a Revolution. Teen Vogue has broken stories that you know, the major media didn't even know existed until Teen Vogue broke it. So, you know, it's a wonderful, wonderful resource. I think I'm going to stop here. I'm going to ask if you guys have questions. I will also just say that, you know, the family legacy kind of goes on. We've got my stepdaughter is heading an organization dealing with kids who have autism and other issues. She's getting her social work degree as we speak in her 50s. One of my granddaughters started the first ACLU chapter in her high school. You know, everybody's doing something. We're all doing something. It's just kind of, you know, it's in the DNA, I think. But yeah, I'd love to hear your questions and what's on your minds.
Hi, Marcia. My name is Courtney Full. Hi, I'm
Hi.
kind of and Marcia Iverson happens to be my mom. So I had actually heard a bit about you throughout this process. And she had some stories about high school, which was really cute, sharing the name as well. So I am facilitating the questions, and I just want to say that in the chat, and you can go back and read, people are blown away by your story. Your history is insanely rich. I mean, really crazy. So we have a few questions, and some may continue to come in. So I'll start with, on a personal level, did you feel like pressure growing up to continue your father and his family's legacy in civil rights work? And also, this might be a little bit of a bigger topic, but I don't know how concise you can be about this, but given the current racial climate in the US and in the world, what do you think are some of the best ways that we can continue to affect change and continue to work towards equality and try and fix, if that's the word to use, some of the major issues we have?
So to your first question, I didn't feel pressure. I think this has been true for my kids. I did what I saw modeled. It didn't hurt. I don't think that my father chose to embrace the Unitarian Church, which is actually primarily white denomination, except that it's rooted in activism going back into the early 1800s. where, you know, they were abolitionists and they've continued to be. Unitarians are still, you know, fighting for all sorts of things all the time. So I was kind of constantly exposed to activism. And I was allowed to ask questions. I remember asking my father a question at some point. And I don't remember what the question was, but he came home the next day with a briefcase full of stuff to refute me that he had the research department at the Urban League put together. So it was my first exposure to the importance of evidence. You know, if you're going to say something, you better be able to back it up. I felt that I was being taken seriously. Now, you know, later my dad may have regretted that, because I remember at an Urban League conference, the chair of the board of the Urban League was always a white corporate guy, because that's where the money came from, right? And the vice chair was always, you know, black person. Ursa Poston was vice chair at one point. And so the chair of the board's daughter, Nancy Steger, and I were the same age, and we looked at the Urban League board and we said, there are all of these old people, probably in their 40s, right? All these old people making decisions about what should happen for young people through the Urban League. And what do they know about young people? And so we went to my dad and said, you know, this is what we think. And my dad turned around and said, so why don't you do a presentation to the board? You may have a point. So I was always just encouraged to, you know, if you got something you want to say or do, then go do that thing. And I was always surrounded by or in communities of you know, people who were similarly inclined. Even in college, you know, there's a lot of anti-war activity going on at Bryn Mawr, and I was part of that because it was impacting Black communities and the war on poverty effort. Now, in terms of what we do now, I feel like it's a parallel moment in some ways to the 60s, because I see so much youth engagement in what's going on. And I think that's really important. I think it's important to find your allies. I think it's important to be informed, so that you're not shooting from the hip. I remember my dad, who couldn't say anything about the war in Vietnam because it was such a problem for President Johnson, and he was trying to get President Johnson to, you know, engage in a domestic agenda. But my dad was also a veteran from World War II. And he traveled to Vietnam a couple of times to meet with the troops. He'd wear military fatigues because he was entitled to, he had been a sergeant. So he, you know, was walking a very careful line with regard to the war. Meanwhile, back at Bryn Mawr, I was going to teach-ins. I was learning about the war. I was in opposition to the war. Daddy was sitting on a dais with McGeorge Bundy, who was the Undersecretary of State, and at a dinner one night. And so he told McGeorge Bundy what I thought. And then afterwards, he brought McGeorge Bundy down and introduced me to McGeorge Bundy as this person whose ideas he had been spouting. And then Daddy walked off and left me with the Undersecretary of State to continue to say what I had learned. Decades later, Francesco and I ran into McGeorge Bundy at a dinner, and he said, and history proved you right. And so it's just an example of how important it is to be informed and to be able to speak on what you care about from an informed place. Shooting from the hip doesn't always get you where you want to go. So shooting from the hip and finding allies, I think, are two really important strategies. During the civil rights movement, one of the most important attorneys at the NAACP was a guy named Jack Greenberg. Jack was Jewish. My late husband, you know, he's got awards from the NAACP. Congressman Ed Towns wrote him into the Congressional Record. He's got awards from the Urban League. He's, you know, he was all in, and he's married to me. Finding those allies is, you know, because we need numbers, we need power. It doesn't, you know, you need to build up a base of people who you can help inform about the issues. I'll give you one more quick example. I'm co-chair of a thing called Degrees NYC, which is an education collective working to improve graduation rates here in New York. And we've got about 60 organizations that are part of it. We had a meeting yesterday, which I helped to set up with Lester Young, who is now the Chancellor for Education for New York State. And one of the things that Degrees NYC has always believed in has been student voice. And so in this meeting, which was a Zoom meeting, of course, we had 4 of us who were, you know, kind of on, you know, the leadership, the executive director and my co-chair, and so the senior staff. But we had 4 students, and the students did the lion's share of the speaking. And Lester Young, who's the chancellor, wants more of that, right? So this is not a time for young people to be silent. Somebody's asked about the book.
Yes, I have also one before that, just so that
Sure.
I have, yes, we definitely want to hear about the book. And I got the chills at one point when your dad left you. Left you. I mean, really incredible. So one before that, I just don't want to lose track, is what career do you feel you've made any like mistakes throughout your career, and what lessons have they given you, if that's the case?
Sure. When I left Avon, I kind of left without a really solid plan. I was running a marketing department at the time, and I had 25 people working for me. Or at the moment that I left, I didn't, and I'll explain why. And it was a culture, we had just changed CEOs, and things were not going as well as they had been. So there were 20% off across the board layoffs. And so I was supposed to lay off 20% of my staff. And I had these 25 people, most of whom were writers and art directors. So they were creatives. I let them go, I let 5 of them go, and then I hired them back freelance, right? Slick. And as you know, writers and creatives, they were perfectly happy to work freelance, because then they could work on their own personal work and writing and arts and stuff, and that worked. Well, we went through this the second year. And by that time, you know, like HR was on to me and said I couldn't do that again. So I really had to let 5 people go. And there were other things going on that were just disturbing. And so, you know, I decided I was out. I couldn't do this anymore. But I didn't really have a clear game plan. I kind of knew some things I wanted to do. I wanted to focus on women and work and families. But it was, you know, I was kind of floundering. And so I would not do that again, right? I mean, it worked out fine. I ended up having consultancy at Catalyst. I ended up with a consultancy at NYU, which is how I ended up then working full-time at NYU. So it worked, but it wasn't, you know, I wasn't thinking clearly. I was just so angry that I was just kind of, you know, jumping into, you know, whatever. And so I'm letting my emotions run the show.
And so then, yes, the next question would be, what inspired you to write your book? And can you tell us about your book and what we can learn from it?
Sure, this is perfect timing. So I wrote the book a number of years ago, after I had worked at NYU for almost 10 years, and then Princeton, and then briefly for about 3 years at Metropolitan College of New York. I was a vice president, and then I moved to Hunter, where I was a dean. And one of the things that was clear almost every step of the way went back to my early corporate days, where I had been in marketing, communications, and advertising, as well as to my Bryn Mawr experience, where they swore, you weren't going to graduate if you didn't know how to write. So I found there were gaps in what students were, the information that students got, and not a lot of interest necessarily on the part of the institution in filling those gaps. So at NYU, for example, I thought there should be a freshman handbook. And so I got my dean to agree. And I said, look, if we're going to have them read this handbook, we need to have something that's going to cause them to hold on to it. And so I said we should put a calendar in, publish it every year, have all of the key critical academic dates in the calendar so that they have to pick it up periodically. And he fought me on that. And finally he gave in. And then when we handed this handbook to the first freshman class to receive it, he stands there and waves this thing up and he says, and so now if you turn to this great calendar in the back of your book. So, but that was, my first intuition about what they didn't know. But I kept finding it along the way. I was doing postgraduate fellowships at Princeton. The guide for postgraduate fellowships told you what the fellowships were. They didn't tell you how to get them. They didn't tell you why you should get them. When I got to Hunter, the pre-law and pre-health advisors reported to me, there's nothing on the website that told you how to do those processes. When I was at Metropolitan College and we had to do a total rebranding, the name changed while I was there, and marketing was part of that, was part of my responsibility, as well as student affairs, which was great. So, I said, okay, so click on registrar on our website. And you clicked on registrar and you found out, when, what the hours were for the registrar's office and where the registrar's office was. And I said, no, people clicking on registrar want to know how to register. So all of that led me to realize, all of the conversations I had with students led me to understand how much students just don't know about how to navigate college. And that's particularly true for first generation students. So as I said, I did it a number of years ago. The publisher that I had then has since jacked the price up to nearly $20, which was not my intention. And so I left them, and through one of my old friends at Avon, who now has a publishing company, we're putting it out again. And yesterday, I got the final proofs. As soon as I approve those final proofs, which I will do this week, it will be out again, available in its first edition cover and design, which was done by one of my folks when I worked at MCNY, the woman who headed that agency, and it'll be out again. Which reminds me, the one other thing that I forgot to say is how important it is to have networks. And thank God for social media. Because, as I said, this book is coming out because of somebody I knew at Avon, and we reconnected on Facebook. And the woman that I knew back when I was at MCNY and who did our marketing and advertising there, and we've stayed connected. And so your networks are really, really important. But yes, any minute now, as soon as I finish doing this one final review, the book will be out again, and it will be priced under $10.
That's awesome. That's incredible. There's a couple of questions that we might not get to, so maybe I'll send them to you in direct message and you can feel free to answer them in the chat or what have you. But I'm gonna pick one of, this will probably be the last one, but it kind of piggybacks off of what you were just talking about networking, and you were talking earlier about finding your tribe. So do you have any advice for young women, tangible advice or just general advice for young women that are trying to find their tribe, especially in this heavily digital age? I know that you just mentioned, thank God for social media, but I also think that maybe there's, it's a double-edged sword, because I think that maybe like part of the question was, do you think it's harder or easier in a way to grow and maintain relationships when things are so rarely face-to-face, especially with COVID? So I don't know if there's any advice you might have for young women. And yeah.
So yeah, first of all, we won't be in COVID forever, which is, I've got my shot. I had my shots, and I hope everybody else gets theirs. And it was actually a very smooth process through NYU Hospital, where the director of medicine at NYU Hospital is one of my former NYU students. So I sent him a note saying, good job. And that's one of the things you do, right? Is like the little notes. Finding those people where there are shared interests and making sure that you figure out ways to stay connected. And so, it could be like, my Bryn Mawr Crafts group, or as soon as we are able to get together for dinner again, my friends who are widows. And being deliberate about it. I fortunately have space where I can entertain, and I do often. I had a brunch, this is now maybe 3-4 years ago, for some extraordinary young women that I've known, some from Bryn Mawr, some from Princeton, some from work projects, and all African-American women. And so I just brought them together because I thought they should know each other, right? And among them, the youngest was then a senior at Hamilton College, and she had been an intern for me. And she was applying to business school, and 3 of these women had graduated from business school. So, and she was just sitting there listening intently, jumping in now and then, but soaking it in. Well, about a year later, no, 5 months later, because she said so, we got an email from her to everybody that she had gotten accepted to Darden Business School, fully paid. This email, right? Within 15 minutes, every single one of those women, one of them was in France, responded to her and said, hit me up, tell me what I can do to help. Every single one of them. She now has a network, which she actually graduated from Darden, top of her class, commencement speaker, and working at Google now and starting a business. That's now a group for her, right? And so however you find these connections, you nurture them, you maintain them, you let people know what's going on with you. And as soon as we are able to be together again, very deliberately, make sure that you plan to have tea or coffee or whatever with people that you like and you want to stay in touch with.
Incredible, thank you. So like I said, we're going to wrap it up. I think that I will, just for the students that I didn't get to your questions, I'm going to direct message them to Marsha, and she can maybe put the answers out if she has a moment to type out some answers to the general chat, if possible.
Or
And
people can email me, mycantarella@gmail.com. I'll put it in the chat.
Yep, perfect. That's also great too, because I know one of them, someone was asking about how they could how people were selected to participate in those meetings that you were talking about having a meeting for yesterday. But also, I just want to say that I am a woman in my 40s, and you've also inspired me to continue thinking about how I can continue moving forward with my career or inspiring and influencing people. So thank you so much. And yeah, I'm going to pass it over to Tara Bellevue, and thank you all for contributing questions as well. Thank you, Marsha.
Thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure. A wonderful way to start my day.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcia. We greatly appreciate it. We're about to do a quick poll. And then let's answer this question and we'll get ready for our next panel. How many TGTW conferences have you attended? Oh, it's moving a lot of first timers. Yes. Okay, with 83% of the vote, we have, this is my first and only conference. Welcome. So excited for you to be here today. Hope you're having a great time. And we're about to move into another amazing workshop with some amazing women of today. It is my pleasure to pass the mic over to Alondra. She's a one-year law student over at the University of Michigan. And she's also the co-founder of Village of Women, VOW, and you'll hear a little bit more about that at the end of the conference. Alondra?
Hi, everyone. So great to be here today. I'm very excited about this panel, and it's the art of interviewing. The founder of today's Girls, Tomorrow's Woman often recites a famous quote, "Preparation plus opportunity equals success." This workshop will provide the girls of today with sound advice on how to prepare resumes, as well as how their resumes are perceived by admissions counselors and employers. This workshop will also emphasize the importance of going on as many interviews as possible to develop confidence in interviewing skills and emphasize your best qualities in tactful ways. And Wendy Williams and Amanda Michelle Breen will join us this panel and conversation. Hello.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
If you could both introduce yourselves and tell everyone how you do, that'd be great. That would be great.
So,
Wendy, if you start.
sure. So good morning, everyone. My name is Wendy Williams. I'm thrilled to be here. I think this is my third or fourth time, probably the third time attending the conference in one form or another. So I wanted to thank the board members and congratulate Tara and everyone with regards to the new incorporation. I think it's phenomenal. It's a great event. I took a lot of notes from the last speaker, which was amazing. My official title is Manager of Talent Acquisition, Diversity and Training with the MTA. So I work for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority. I'm thrilled to be here. This is one of my favorite topics. So when asked to be a part of this panel, I love talking about resume writing, interviewing skills with young people, as well as different levels of employment. So I'm excited to be here. I've been with the MTA, I think almost 6 years. Prior to that, I worked for a bank actually for about 25 years. So I have a lot of experience when it comes to hiring, interviewing, and so forth. So I'm thrilled to be here with Amanda and our moderator. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Wendy. I'm happy to be here with you too. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amanda Breen. I would like to also thank Tara and Marcia and the rest of the founders and also the board members for inviting me here today to speak about the art of interviewing. I'm very excited. I had actually attended one of the Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman events about 3 years ago. At the time, I was working at the MTA in HR. Coincidentally, Wendy and I did not know each other before today, so this is a coincidence. So I was working there. That was my first HR job. I was a recruiter there for the IT department and also the MTA police. I worked there for about 2.5 years, I believe it was. And then today I work for Lufthansa Group, which is the, if you're not aware of it, it is the largest aviation group in Europe. So I work for a global international company now. They own multiple airlines and also are affiliated with other companies within aviation within their portfolio of companies. So I'm working there now, and my official title, it's a long one, it is Human Resources Manager, Training, Development, Change, and Communication. And these days I am focusing a lot on restructure and transformation topics. So I'm very happy to be here. I do have some interviewing experience, not as much as Marsha, but I will do what I can to, I'm sorry, as Wendy, and I will do what I can to answer your questions. And thank you again for inviting me here. Really happy to start the panel. Thank you.
Thank you both for your introduction. I wanted to start asking, before an interview is granted, one typically has to submit a resume. What are some things a person should put on the resume in order to express interest in a specific opportunity?
Who would you like to start?
Any of you, that's fine.
Wendy, you could start, go ahead.
Okay, awesome. So I have some notes, but I'm going to kind of shy away from my notes for a minute. Initially, I started with you should focus on your education and skills. However, when I speak with adults, for example, thinking about looking for a job and employment and writing their resume, I always talk about the importance of knowing yourself and what you want to do. So oftentimes we're looking for employment and we just want to click the button, right? But I think it's really important to begin thinking about what are you really passionate about? Meaning, what do you enjoy doing? Because you can get a job, but you don't like the job. So I think it's important to begin with, what do you really want to do? What do you enjoy doing? What's your passion? And then look at the different jobs. So when you look at a job and you think about yourself as a student, for example, so perhaps you're thinking, well, I don't have a lot of experience, but in theory, you do have a lot of experience if you think about it, if you think about school. So when you think about your resume, as someone who does not have a lot of direct employment experience, I think that you should begin by thinking about your experience, the different classes that you've attended, that you've completed, different organizations, extracurricular activities, for example. Think about a job that you're going to apply for, look at the job description, and think about the classes that you've completed or any outside activities that you can utilize for that resume. So the resume should be specific or customized to the job that you're applying for. So start with your school activities, basically. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks, Wendy. So yeah, you had already mentioned some really good key points here. I would say as well, just to reiterate, extracurriculars in school, definitely you want to focus on that. I would also recommend listing out directly any coursework that you've done. When you find your niche or your passion and which direction you want to go, I would say tailor your first resume to that. Make sure that your focus is very clear in your resume. I know it's very difficult starting out. I also had this issue or this challenge, I should say, when I first started out, but really do your best to see what you're passionate about. And if you're not already doing it, I would highly, highly recommend looking for volunteering opportunities so that you can gain some experience in areas that you feel that you're passionate about, and see if you really actually like them before you decide this is what I want to major in school or what you want to focus on. So volunteering is a great way to do that. Also, I've seen plenty of virtual volunteering opportunities. It of course depends on what it is, if you can actually do it virtually, but we live in a virtual world. That's just the reality. So I would say really focus on that, as well as they're also offering some virtual internships. Now, I don't know if they're for, young women like yourself, just starting out and getting out of high school shortly. However, it would be something to definitely look into. So that would be something I would recommend. And you want to have on the top of your resume, I would say a short summary, a few sentences to really focus and hone in on what your goals are. And also another thing is what I recommend for people just starting out and just applying. You want to have definitely a cover letter that explains your intentions and what your focus is, and really write to the hiring manager about your passions and why these opportunities would be appropriate for your portfolio that you're trying to build for yourself. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to the next question, which is preparing for interviews, which is when an interview is granted, what are some tips? What are key tips for preparing, and what do you suggest, especially for high school girls who maybe don't have as much experience?
So
Amanda, you can start.
okay,
Oh, Wendy's fine.
No, go ahead. It's fine. I'm looking at my notes. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll start. Thank you. So yeah, when an interview is granted, where do you start? I would say, just going back to what I had mentioned earlier, on your resume, you want to have, maybe I'll elaborate a bit on this, a summary at the top of your resume with what your intentions are, what your focus is, and what your strengths are, right? If you have not been in the workforce yet, that's fine. Focus in on what you personally feel your talents are and what you're good at. For instance, communication. If you're big on communication, if in your education you have done well in teamwork or been a team player, you can list any special projects that would be relevant also for something that you've done in school, and list some details there. So you wanna have that ready for the hiring manager, and that also goes back to the cover letter as well. So that's my recommendation for how you would express specific interest once you're granted an opportunity. Wendy?
Sure. Part of the question was, how do you prepare, correct? How do you prepare for the interview? So to prepare for the interview, in my opinion, I think it's important, not just for high school students, by the way, for everyone. Key is knowing the organization and the job description. So I always recommend to print out a copy of the job description itself, study the job description, know the qualifications and the requirements beforehand, look at the About Us page on the company's homepage. So I think that's really key, knowing the company, knowing the clients, knowing the business. Think about some of the challenges that perhaps they encounter on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's really key. I conduct a lot of interviews or mock interviews for high school students, and we talk a little bit about their interest in the MTA. And I ask them, what do you know about the organization itself? And it's not just the trains and the buses. I want to know a little bit more about what do they know about the MTA, the culture, the different groups that we have, employee resource groups, our diversity and inclusion initiative, et cetera. All of this is on the About Us page. There are different links in most companies nowadays where you can do your research. So I think key is it's twofold: knowing the business, knowing the organization, knowing the client, and also knowing about the job itself, the job requirements and the job descriptions, because these are some questions that will be asked of you prior to actually interviewing. And then another point, looking at your resume, I would have my resume side by side to the job itself that I'm applying for, and I would jot down notes, specifically stories. So I'm big on stories as well, because when someone is called for an interview, they're going to ask you questions, and not just a yes or no question. They're going to ask you specific questions relative to the job itself. So they are going to ask what we refer to as behavioral type questions. Tell me about a time you did X, Y, and Z. The questions are always customized to the job, because the interviewer and the recruiter, they want to envision you in this role. They want to see basically that you can actually perform well in the role. So key is proper preparation entails knowing yourself, your skills that you bring to the table, and knowing a lot about the company that you're applying for and why you're passionate about the organization. So I think that's important. I hope that helps.
Yes. One top question asked at interviews, and one that I struggle with still today is, what are your weaknesses? How would you answer that question? And what are some ways that you suggest will be a good way to craft an answer for that question? And Amanda, if you would like to start. Please.
Sure. I believe sorry, you were cutting out a little bit. I believe you said the question about what are your weaknesses? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so this question is difficult. So it's you know, what I recommend to do, and the best way to answer it is to look at something that you would say a weakness, but that could also be seen as a strength. For example, you could say, you know, you expect a certain level of perfectionism from yourself, right? This and you can elaborate, really saying that, you know, you like things to be, you know, 110%, where really 100% is okay. Something that you can spin it in a positive way, but you're also saying that this could be an area I could work on. Another way you could answer this is you could outline some areas that you would need more experience and development in. For example, I wouldn't focus on anything like, if the job really requires a high level of Excel knowledge, I wouldn't say, you know, I really need experience in Excel. However, if it's a smaller area that could help you and propel you forward in the job, I would say, you know, these are some skill sets or programs or tools that I would need to gain more experience in that would be helpful for me in this position. But nothing major that it would potentially take you out of the interview process. Thank you, Alondra. Wendy?
Absolutely. So I agree with Amanda. Everything that she said is spot on. Actually, one of the examples that I typically use is with the Excel. So I would simplify it just by stating that first off, when you're asked that question, the thing they don't want to hear that I don't have any weaknesses, because we all do, right? So that's the first point. The second point that I would mention is, as Amanda just mentioned, think about the job itself. And when you look at the job description, what I don't advise is that you share a weakness that's required for the job, meaning if they require analytics, for example, problem solving, I don't want you to share that I'm really not great at problem solving. So think about something that's the opposite from the job description itself. It could be anything. It could be perhaps the job is not customer facing and it doesn't require that you do any type of public speaking. So you could say that I'm a little shy and I'm not really comfortable in speaking with large groups, something like that. So when you share your weakness, think about something that's not related to the job, because if it is in fact related to the job, the recruiter or the hiring manager is going to thank you for your answer, take notes, and move on. But think about it from their perspective. Would you hire someone who has a weakness that's one of the major requirements of the job itself? So that's how I would answer that. It's a difficult question.
Thank you both. Wendy, this question is more specific to what you had said earlier. You mentioned that you were very big on storytelling during interviews. Can you tell us more about stories that are appropriate to tell during interviews?
Sure. So stories that are appropriate are always related to the job itself. So for example, you look at your resume, you look at the job description, think about a situation. So if you are applying for an internship as a law clerk, for example, right? So something in law, you want to be an attorney, and your minor or your major in high school happens to be law. That's wonderful. Sometimes when I speak to high school students and college students, they don't realize the importance of the classes that you've completed. So you could share something about leading a project for your law class. So for example, you were assigned a project where you worked on with your classmates, you led the project, you organized the timelines, everyone had a component, etc. So a story has to be situation. So we typically would say, what was the situation? What was the task that was assigned? What did you do? And what was the outcome? So basically what the recruiter or the hiring manager, what they want to know is, what situation did you find yourself in, especially problem solving, by the way. So what was the situation? What did you do to resolve the issue? And then how did you resolve it? That's what they want to see basically as far as storytelling. A story basically has to do with looking at the job description and thinking about your experience. It's not difficult. It's not as difficult as you think. Amanda shared earlier that you should jot down notes. I believe in writing. So as was mentioned earlier, that you should read a lot and write. So you should write. I would list all of my skills, my soft skills, my hard skills, and also the different qualities that I bring, classes that may be relative to a job that you're applying for. It could be a marketing job, by the way. A lot of students that I've met are wonderful when it comes to computers, software, web design, for example. So you may say to yourself as a high school student, what does web design have to do with an administrative position that I'm applying for? Think about it this way. It may be that the person that you're interviewing with needs a little help with their web design. You never know. So don't discount your skills. But as far as storytelling, a lot of that has to do with the job that you're applying for, the description, and thinking about your experience relative to school. And don't forget all the volunteering work that you've completed.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
And Amanda, this final question is for you and Wendy, of course, if you'd like to answer it, you can. Interviewing for an opportunity sometimes has less to do with one's capabilities and more to do with interpersonal skills. Can you share some suggestions for people that are shy or are maybe introverts and don't necessarily have many skills with public speaking?
Mm-hmm. Sure, thank you. So what I would say is for these type of people who are not as comfortable with communicating, interviewing is of course intimidating for everybody, but I would say it's especially intimidating for people like this who are not so comfortable. So here's what I would recommend. When you get an interview, this is an opportunity to really showcase yourself. So the more that you do participate in interviews and get invited for interviews, the more experience you get. So I would say the first thing is to really just apply to anything that is relevant for what you're looking for, and any opportunity you get to showcase yourself in an interview and gain that experience for being really put on the spot and being questioned and interviewed about yourself and being comfortable with talking about yourself is a chance for you to continue your development and to do better the next time, even if you don't get that opportunity. It's not a waste. So this is what I always tell people: if we're not sure about a job, I'm not sure if I want this position or this opportunity, if you may want it a little bit or maybe even a little bit interested that it could work out for you, throw your resume in. It can't hurt. What happens when you don't apply is you'll never know. So this is what I would recommend, and then you get that opportunity to really sharpen those interviewing skills. And then also what I would say is think of times in interviews where you can showcase also your interpersonal skills by speaking about situations. It could be if you haven't had an opportunity yet, it could be in school or in life where you have been assertive and used maybe your communication skills to get ahead in certain instances where it has worked out and had a positive outcome for you. So those would be my recommendations. Thank you.
Oh, I'll add on really briefly. As far as preparing for the interview, someone who's an introvert, right? So it's really scary. I always recommend mock interviews, actually, meaning interviewing, practicing with your family members. I also recommend, as a high school student or a student in general, participate in class. It may help as well. Or if you are assigned a team project and each person is asked to speak, or you may need a speaker to represent the class, that's a start. So the reason that I suggest high school and starting there is because these are your peers and you're comfortable with speaking for the most part in front of your peers. So that helps as well. But I'm a huge proponent for anyone. Mock interviews are really important. A mock interview basically means that you're going to have someone interview you who you're comfortable with, and this will help you to articulate your skills, your experience, etc. Oftentimes we're a little shy as far as sharing our accolades and our skills and our experience, but that's your time to shine when you're called for an interview. So I think it's really important. It's not easy, public speaking, but it's worth it when you get a little practice.
Yeah, and just something I want to add to build onto that quickly, and this is important. When you are comfortable, you will never grow and develop yourself. So it's important, and I highly recommend, although it's uncomfortable, putting yourself purposely in uncomfortable situations and taking those chances, because that's when you really look back and say, this was terrible for these amount of weeks and months, but look at how much I have progressed in my own development. So that would be also a tip. And I've also learned that for myself. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for answering my questions. Court now host a Q&A with questions, but thank you both so much.
Awesome, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Alondra.
No, I mean, your guys' experience is amazing. So pertinent. So there are a few questions, but we have such like a specific schedule. So I think I'm also going to do what I did with Marsha, where maybe I'll ask you to answer some of them in the chat if you can. Sure. But we'll just build on basically what you were just talking about. The one question maybe we'll have you answer is, how do you improve your speaking skills to be more smooth during an interview? So maybe any tips on dealing with nerves or anything like that that can help people to speak a little bit clearer and more confidently in their interviews.
Wendy, do you want to take this one?
Sure, I'll start. So I think that it's important to know yourself and to know your story. Nerves keep you humble, by the way. So nerves are okay. I will say that I public speak. I conduct webinars, virtual interviews. I love it, by the way. I love it, but I'm always a little nervous, and that's a good thing. So nerves are not a bad thing. I'll start by saying that, but it's so important to know your story, and it will flow. What do I mean by that? Meaning knowing your skills, your experience, what you bring to the table. Because if you know your story, it's going to flow naturally. If you know the experience level that you can bring to the table, why they should hire you, and you're very comfortable in what you do, then it'll flow naturally. If you stutter, for example, like myself once in a while, that's okay, by the way. That really is okay. They're not going to ding you for that. They're not going to ding you for being nervous. They we'll look at the fact that if you can't articulate what you bring to the table and why they should hire you. So I think that it's okay to be nervous, practice, conduct those mock interviews, go on as many interviews as you can, because I think that's important also. I have friends who haven't gone on an interview in 10, 15 years. And so they're nervous, and they've been in the workforce for a very long time. So I think it's okay to go on an interview maybe once a year. I hope that helps. Great question.
Sure. Thanks. And just to build off of your points, Wendy, personally, public speaking is something that I'm still working on. I'm not totally comfortable with it, but I'm working on it. And I don't know if you could tell, but I'm still pretty new to it. So I would say for myself, what I have been doing to try to get more comfortable and really put myself out there is, again, putting myself in uncomfortable situations on purpose, so that I get better, and I've forced myself to work on these things. Another thing that I've tried to do is really, if I'm not ready to answer something, I really take a moment to focus on my own thoughts before I need to use a filler word like or something like that, where then you stutter. The next thing is, I have personally identified for myself people that I admire the way that they speak, and I watch videos of them speaking, or people at work, for instance, leaders that I have at work to be sort of like a mentor for me. And I really pay attention to how they handle situations, how they answer questions, and their process. So that personally helps me. Another thing that you can do is really just I would say be confident in yourself as much as possible. When you feel confident, when you feel prepared, you are able to speak on that more eloquently and really get your point across. So thank you. Those are my tips.
Courtney, can I share just two things? I think that just a couple of things that they should look at as far as preparing their resume. My next move that's one website. I'll type it in the chat. My next move is a great website for someone who is interested in a particular field, for example. When you go to the website, it will give you the experience requirements, the educational requirements, and you can also look at different types of jobs. So my next move is really good for high school students or anyone looking for employment. The next one that I would recommend would be collegerecruiter.com. Again, I'll type that in the chat. Collegerecruiter.com, a lot of great resources for students. So my next move, collegerecruiter.com. Something else that we talked about really quickly was the resume. It is important to customize your resume because most employers utilize an applicant tracking system. It's an ATS system. This is really critical. If you don't customize your resume, it may just go into space and remain there. So key is to utilize keywords for your resume so that you're called for an interview. So it's one thing to design your resume, but you have to customize your resume for the job that you're applying for. So the last point or tip that I will share is to use what is called a word cloud. It's WORD-CLOUD, word cloud. A word cloud is amazing. You've probably seen them, but didn't realize that it was a word cloud. So when you look at a job description, if you're not sure as to words that you should utilize in your resume, go to type in word cloud, Google word cloud. There are different word clouds that you can utilize, and the words that's more prevalent in the job description will pop out the largest, if you will, in the word cloud. Those are the words that you're going to use in your resume. So I just wanted to mention those 3 key points. I'll type them in the chat because these are important resources for the students to utilize when they're building their resume. Thank you. Sorry, I know I took up a little extra time, but I wanted to mention I have those notes and I use them. I use word cloud myself, so I wanted to share that.
Wow, thank you so much to this amazing group of women that I am so privileged and honored to be a part of today's Girl Tomorrow's Woman Network. So the art of interviewing, as they have all expressed, they are a part of our network, so you'll have easy access to them, and we'll be able to share out their emails if you want to contact them. There were some great questions, comments that happened in the chat, and we're going to keep this conversation going. I'm going to actually pass the mic over to Joan Goldsmith for the Pearls of Wisdom workshop. And thank you again, Amanda, Wendy, and Alondra. We appreciate you. I'm happy to say Joan is a board member of today's Girl Tomorrow's Woman, and she is an adjunct professor at Manhattanville College. Welcome, ladies.
Good morning. Marcia and Michelle, are you both there? I don't see.
I'm here.
Okay.
Yes. Hi. Good morning.
Good morning. We are in amazing company for sure. So far this morning has been so inspiring. As Tara just introduced, I am Joan Goldsmith. I am currently an adjunct professor at Manhattanville College. We're going to be sharing the many pearls of wisdom that we've even heard from today. I mean, it's crazy. So Dr. Michelle, you want to introduce yourself and then Marcia, and then we can get started with a few questions.
Sure. Well, I'm just honored to have this opportunity to be here today. I've been, I think, a part of the organization for like 6-7 years. It's been quite a while. And all I want to really add today is I'm just going to add some pearls to the pearls that have already been started, because they have been dropping, layering all day, from earrings to bracelets to necklaces. Is just a rich environment. So I'll start with one. When I went off to college, my first year in college, my mother gave me some really good advice. She said, now I'm a New York City girl. I'm going to an HBCU, Tuskegee University. And she said, look, here's the rules. Do not hang out with the freshmen. They don't know any more than you know. Maybe you can be their friends. Find you a sophomore. That's a better blend for you. But find the juniors and the seniors in your group, because they're going to pull you through and navigate you through the journey of the next 4 or maybe 5 years. So one of the things I did very early is my parents are kind of old school. and they just drop pearls of wisdom. My father says stuff like, you know, just because cats have kittens in an oven doesn't make them biscuits. Everything about the way they engage is about getting the wisdom. But those pearls right in the beginning are what started me on my career. I had a 1.2 GPA my first year in college. I didn't even qualify for financial aid, but one of my professors saw something in me. And 4 years later, 5 years later, I graduated with a scholarship to law school, a double major, double minor, and a scholarship to graduate school. All that to say is that all of the information that we hear and we're getting and we're absorbing today, delivery, delivery, delivery. It's not just what you get, it's how you deliver it and articulate it to other people. And that's what I've spent my life doing, committed my life to doing, working at Black Enterprise Magazine, Black Entertainment Television, working for the Pentagon. I've always looked for opportunities to give back and rise, help other people rise, because no matter how well you know a thing, if you can't deliver it, people will think that you don't know it well. My name is Michelle Enix Kenny. I am the CEO and founder of Excellence by Design, and that's why I started the organization, because I want to help people articulate well what they know and live exactly.
Thank you, Dr. Michelle Enix Kenny, for sharing that. Marcia?
Yes.
Marcia Poston.
Good morning. Good morning. I am so happy to be here. My name is Marcia Poston. I'm a second-year law student at Howard University School of Law. I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, but I spent some time also in Tennessee, where I also attended an HBCU, Tennessee State University, right in the heart of Nashville. And it was there at TSU that I studied social work, and that's what I got my major, my bachelor's in. But I also found my passion there for government, civic engagement, and also politics. And I found that passion and my love for that by being involved in the Student Government Association, doing an internship at the Tennessee State Capitol, also doing an internship here in DC on Capitol Hill with my hometown representative. And also too, my university gave me a platform to be able to get an internship at the White House under First Lady Michelle Obama. So that's where I really got my start in government. And that carried me on even after undergrad. I went back home to Indianapolis to work for the mayor of Indianapolis, doing community engagement, outreach work. And so now, even as a law student, you know, it's kind of these different areas that I've had experience in, but I'm so thankful, even though my path was not traditional, because I can pull from those experiences. And even as a law student, sometimes I consider myself still a social worker, because, you know, intervening on issues and problems, and also too, you know, just improving the quality of life for everyone. So as a law student, those experiences have been monumental for me. And, you know, I graduate next year from law school. So excited to be done with this journey, but even more so, I'm more excited to be here with you all today. You can't see, but I do have my pearls in specifically for this session. So hopefully you all are going to enjoy the advice that we give to you all today. So thank you so much for having me.
Tremendous successes, both of you. My personal career path was so smooth, with many great successes also, but certainly not as exciting as what you're both sharing. Thank you. And by the way, I'm wearing pearls too, but I'm also, which is so weird, I'm wearing an MTA token. I don't know how that all happened this morning, that I connected with the previous group. So when I asked what was the most impactful and helpful advice anyone gave you when you were younger, you know, I had a few thoughts on that. The first one I want to open up was with my first pearl of wisdom from Maya Angelou. I'm trying to share some pearls from some famous people as well. And she said, quote, "Being a woman is hard work." And that's exactly what we're hearing. She was absolutely correct. Some of the advice that I received before I go to Marcia was to keep your lens in focus, strive for success, be flexible. And the most important one for me was learn not to be afraid to ask for help. That was really key for me, to be able to say to my sister or my family that I knew, or someone in my career path, or even in the school where I was teaching, that I needed help. So those were mine. Of course, Maya Angelou said that's okay. It's hard work. That's what it is. So Marcia, you want to take it from there?
Yeah, so I think the best or most important piece of advice that I've gotten as a young girl was to create value. And I had a teacher tell me that, one of my high school teachers, and I don't think I really understood what that meant at the time, but I've grown to understand that that just means being able to be someone that people can learn from. And not only creating value for others, but also for yourself too. So gaining experiences and knowledge, building this bank that you can be able to pull back from when you go on different experiences and things of that nature. So for me, just over the years, something that I really loved doing, and the first speaker spoke about, was listening to different podcasts, watching documentaries. Even on social media, I'm very intentional about following people or things I'm not normally interested in, just so I can have something different to break up the monotony of my timeline. But just, taking advantage of different experiences and things, because you want to be someone who's well-rounded, someone that's interesting too. Like my friends know I love podcasts, so they always come to me and asking me about weird little things. And I say, oh, I'll listen to this podcast about that. You want to be someone interesting who can always add value to a conversation or any room that you're in.
Dr. Michelle?
Yeah, so, wow. I guess for me, one of the speakers said earlier that, this journey is not linear. And for me, it certainly isn't. I don't have I don't even know if I want to call it a traditional story, but I'm the kid that heard a lot of the can'ts, don'ts, will, won'ts, learning disabilities, social issues, bullying. So I was not, it didn't look like success was going to come from me. And I remember one of my college professors said to me, because I had such a hard time socializing in Alabama from New York, it was really hard. And so he said, Michelle, you're going to have to learn in life how to be a chameleon. He says, if the chameleon jumps on a table, he's not a table. If the chameleon jumps on a wall, he's not a wall. If he's on a tree, he's not a tree. But whatever environment he's in, he learns how to blend in without bending in. He said, you have to learn how to assimilate and be a part of the culture without losing who you are. It's like a book, right? Everybody that writes a book in English has the same 26 characters alphabet to write the book with, but the way you organize your 26 characters is what makes you a bestseller or on the bucket list. And so I've learned from that. I've grown from that. My mother would remind me of that. You're unique, you're different. You're not like everybody else. While you are, you have to learn how to work with people, and culture is hard. It's hard fitting in. It's hard finding your tribe, your village, people that really rep for you. But that, I think, is one of the most important things that has gotten me through a lot of hills and valleys, is just knowing how to blend in, how to be a part of the team, how to socialize, how much to go. What day should I go out and have a drink after work? Or maybe this is not for me, and that's not my group, that's not my tribe. But learning how to fit that into the narrative of my life, that was probably the most valuable thing that took me through some really hard places.
Blend, not bend.
Right. How to blend in, like a blending without bending, becoming the thing.
Great.
How to blend, to complement, to work with it without becoming the thing that you're working with. So when the chameleon gets off the tree, he's back to being a chameleon.
Thank you for sharing. Marcia?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess my advice for that was just, to create value and add to any environment that you're in. I think that kind of goes back to the idea of being a chameleon, right? So you can go sit on that branch for a little bit, add some value, and then go back to doing, whatever you were doing. So that definitely feeds into what Dr. Michelle was saying.
And besides educational preparation, I would like to give advice of how to achieve success besides the educational preparation, and of course, we heard so much about being prepared for interviews, being prepared for all of the discussions you have about the jobs, but besides educational, and I was thinking about staying positive, staying kind, as you said, to be part of it. I wanted to hear, maybe share about your, besides educational preparation. I did want to share my second pearl of wisdom, which is from a new best-selling book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. I don't know if any of you have heard of this. It just came out. It is by Charlie Mackesy, and he said, this is also a quote from the book, my second pearl of wisdom, but from this book, quote, when the big things feel out of control, focus on love, which is right under your nose. So following our passion, as Michelle just said, to start from what you love. Marcia, you want to add to that? Besides educational preparation, what would you say the best advice is?
The best advice for success, I would have to say from personal experience, I know the biggest barrier for me to obtaining success is negative self-talk and just being scared, my own fears. And I feel like, so for example, in high school, I was always scared to try out for the basketball team. I don't know why, but I was super self-conscious young girl. People staring at me and me thinking I'm going to mess up. Am I going to shoot in the wrong court or hoop or something like that? Just always stopped me. But who knows? I could be in a WNBA right now had I just, poured myself with more positive talk. So I guess I say that to say is, put yourself in challenging environments, try out new things. Even if you think you're not capable, just do it. You don't really know until you actually try it. And so for me, I ended up in high school, I enlisted in the Army. It was a very spontaneous decision. So I'm still in the military today as an Army officer. Spontaneous decision. I was walking in a guidance counselor's office. I knew I was going to go to college. I just didn't know when or how. And there was an Army recruiter there. And I just spontaneously signed up for the Army. My teachers, friends, and my mother were shocked, but it turned out to be the best decision for me. I didn't know if I would be able to make it through it, but I actually did. And I'm so thankful for my military experience because I got the opportunity by going to boot camp to really understand my own leadership abilities and understanding really who Racia is. Now that's a very extreme example, but I just say that to say is you really don't know who you are until you put yourself in different environments. I think even as a high schooler, go to your city councilor, ask if you can shadow them, just go out and try different internships and things of that nature. The worst thing that people can tell you is no, but you have to go out and take that initiative.
Which brings us to talking about our models. Michelle, you want to talk about the models that you've had in your life to bring you to this point? I know that Racia will mention her mom again, I'm sure.
Moms are always on the top of the list. But I just want to add to the last comment that one of the things I think is also very critical is train yourself is a better way to say it, on being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Train yourself on how to become comfortable with being uncomfortable, because anything you're going to accomplish in this lifetime, it's going to be out of your comfort zone. And with that being said, Joan, you and I have a similarity. Maya Angelou is my go-to. I have it on my voicemail. I've had it for probably 5-6 years. People may forget what you say. They may even forget what you do, but people never forget how you make them feel. You have to develop relationships with people that go back and forth. You shouldn't be the only one giving in a relationship, and you shouldn't be the only one taking in a relationship. But with the quality of those relationships, and I think they talked about that on the interview panel, the quality of the relationship, take time, get to know people, spend time with them, really care about them. You don't have to have, like my father says, here we go with the analogies again. I'd rather have I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. But you want to make sure that you are adding value in your relationships. They will give back. There will be reciprocity, but the right relationship, and I think Chase had that as a tagline, is everything. but Maya Angelou is definitely my go-to person. Of course, there are a lot of other people that bring different things because everybody adds some value to our life. But her in particular, because while I was at Tuskegee, she and Coretta Scott King, we met every second and fourth Saturday. It was an organization called the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, and they would come into the room and say to us, we're not here because we're great. We're here because you're great. You got to find your tribe. And there are a lot of people that want to pour the sustenance of their life into your present value.
Absolutely. A lot of connections on the screen in these boxes, for sure. Thank you for putting that up. Racine, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just would say, I think what Dr. Enix said about, being able to pull some inspiration from anyone, I definitely can. That resonates with me because I can't think of one single role model that I can look to. My mother, I look up to her for her hard work, her work ethic and things of that nature. College advisor, for his leadership that he showed me. Even I have my friends that I call my peer role models, because them just being who they are inspire me in some kind of way. And I want to emphasize that, just them being who they are, because sometimes I think we have these role models in our head and we put them on this pedestal. We look at them as just these perfect people that don't make mistakes. But, that's everything but the opposite to me of what a role model is. And I know even when I mentor young people, I always, try to be very clear and transparent about, I'm a human, I make mistakes, you might look up to me. And that's very important because we don't want to set this image that we are these perfect people, because then that makes the goal look a little bit more unattainable, right? So just knowing that these are regular people and I can do the same thing as them who are considered my role models.
Before we go to the next question, I just wanted to share one of my role models is right on the screen, my sister Marcia. She was my in-house personal cheerleader and life coach to today and going forward. So thanks, Marcia. But in my family, she was Marsha. So, so she was one of my, and I also would have to say, my clergy is also, I would say, one of my go-to people. I think that I feel that I've learned so much global knowledge, and of course the weekly vision to keep me going. I walk away every week feeling stronger and more powerful from listening to the words in my clergy. So I would have to say that was also one of my role models, besides my sister. So I also wanted to talk about the, we had mentioned Maya Angelou, but I also wanted to shout out to Amanda Gorman, who also spoke at the most current inaugural event. And I loved her words. I mean, she's truly a jewel. She is. We're wearing pearls, but she's a jewel. And she wrote, "If only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it." And I feel that everyone on the screen is striving to be successful, to be it, to be their best be their best selves. So my last question is that to parting, do you have a quote that could be your that could be part of your auto signature? Michelle, you said, and I'm sure you will have another one by Maya Angelou, that she would be your go-to person, part of your quote that you would go to. For me, and someone mentioned it before, probably would have been a quote that could be part of my auto signature, would be from one of our new, my leading ladies, besides my sister, Eleanor Roosevelt. And she wrote, quote, this is my last pearl of wisdom before we close. Women, quote, "Women must be more conscious of themselves as women and of their ability." So being more conscious, which is just what Marcia said, to know your strengths and to capitalize on them, build them up. So auto signature. You want to start, Michelle?
I'll just give you one more. Henry David Thoreau. Go confidently in the direction of your dreams and live the life you've always imagined.
Wow.
I would have to say for me, a military saying that we always say and got me through boot camp was adapt and overcome. Simply, knowing that rough times do not last long, adapt to it, and you have all the power, the brilliance, the intelligence, the swag, the sass to overcome it. So that's what I want you all with, adapt and overcome.
Thank you, ladies, for making this section, the last section, so wonderful. I just wanted to say thank you and happy Women's History Month. And Courtney, do we have any questions?
So incredible session, and I'm going to type a few into the chat because we do want to be mindful of running very over, and you guys dropped some amazing pearls. So I am going to drop a couple of questions that came up into the chat for each of you, if you have a chance to kind of throw out some answers. And I think Tara is saying that we are going to have to move on to the Money and Power speaker. So Marsha, are you going to do the intro for that? Thank you both of you, and Joan, for a great session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So amazing up until this point, and we are going to continue the amazement, if you will, with trailing husbands who will be speaking about money is power.
Thank you so much, and good morning to everyone. So just in the essence of time, I'm going to be brief, but there are two things that I wanted to really touch on, especially when it comes to money, is about strategy and patience with yourself. Just to throw out some questions, I know everyone's not gonna be able to answer, but for all of you, like, have you thought about, or made a list of your financial goals, right? If it's a car, if you wanna live on your own, what schools you want to attend, right? If you'll be able to afford tuition, dorming, books, right? There's so many things that come along with that. Traveling, buying whatever you want, right? Now, have you actually thought about how you're going to get there? Okay. You're not too young to start planning for that now. Whatever grade that you're in, now is the time to start. Don't let age stop you from taking control of your financial freedom. Okay. Set that goal and be strategic about how you're going to reach it. All right, so I'm sure some of you either maybe work part-time or you're receiving money somehow from somewhere, right? If it's parents or however, right? But do you spend all of it or do you save some of it, right? Ask yourself these questions, right? Because you want to make sure that you are saving money somewhere for yourself. If 2020 has not taught us anything, it at least taught us to be prepared, right? So saving is very, very important. You never know what could happen. You never know when, even if your income might be very small, you still want to make sure that you have the ability to take control. Okay, so you never know when you might stop receiving whatever amount of income that you're used to. Okay, so every few dollars, whatever it is, a lot of people do $1 a day, that adds up. If you can do $5, $10, $15 every 2 weeks, that adds up so that you can eventually do and use your money for what you want to, instead of being stuck in a situation where you have to rely on someone else. Okay, to actually talk a little bit more about being strategic, right? It's also important to know how to budget now so that you won't be forced to budget later. Okay, knowing how much money actually comes in so that you know how much should then go out, because a lot of us get caught spending more than we actually make, right, in the future, because we end up borrowing money that's not really ours, right? And so you have to know those numbers. You have to be patient and sit with yourself so that you can see where adjustments need to be made. Right. So, and then speaking about borrowing money, right, in order to build credit, unfortunately, you have to borrow money to do so. Right. But the most important thing is that you do it right in the beginning so that you don't have to take the time to try to fix it later on. Right. You don't want to apply for things that sound good. Okay. A lot of things sound good, but if you take the time to research it, then you'll actually be able to see what can actually benefit you and help you reach your goals and not actually bring you down. Right. I'm sure most of you probably enjoy shopping, right? And that will probably never change as you get older, right? But have you thought about some of those goals that I mentioned in the beginning, right? And then how you're actually going to prioritize where your money is going. Okay, so you don't want to get caught up, especially if you like to go into the mall. Some people might not have been to the mall in a year, right? But let's say if you go in, a lot of the stores want to offer you all these credit cards and 10% off this and points. But if you don't actually think about it first, you're going to put yourself in more of a hole than you can get out of. So again, you want to be strategic and have patience with yourself, all right? So that you're not spending more money later on. One tip that I definitely want to leave with you, as students, one of the easiest ways for you to build credit before you really have income, right, is by applying for a secured card. A secured card is basically where you borrow against your own money. All right, so all that money that you've saved up, you can go to a bank that offers it. You would say, hey, I've saved up $500. They will then give you a secured card with a $500 limit. And as long as you use it properly, paying it on time, not maxing it out, keeping it for a certain period of time, you will start establishing credit for yourself so that you can eventually get the things that you want. Okay, so that's how you can really see the power in money. All right, I cannot stress enough. Now is the time to start instead of waiting, right? I've always been a big saver. So you need to understand how you interact with money. Some people need to hide money from themselves. Some people, they can save just, you know, automatically. I'm a very big saver, right? So just to tell you just a little bit even about like some of the financial decisions I've made, like as soon as I graduated high school, I was able to get my first car because I saved up and I was working in high school. Shortly after graduating college, I purchased my first property, right? Right before COVID, I purchased a second one and now I'm planning to get a third. Right? I've been able to travel the world and not put myself into a ridiculous amount of debt because I was patient with myself and I was strategic. Because at your age, I knew what I wanted, right? I made small adjustments now so that I was able to get everything that I wanted as I got older, all right? And I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't making six figures. I still don't make six figures now that makes purchasing all these things so easy, right? But I researched, I had patience, and again, I was strategic so that every step that I took along the way helped me move forward, all right? Even if you make mistakes along the way, it is okay. But continue to collect the tools that you need, like attending conferences like this one, right? And speaking to people that have reached the goals that you actually want. All right. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Again, I know I have a very brief amount of time, but I wanted to just give you those tools and give you some encouragement that now is the time to start planning your goals and making those adjustments so that you can get everything that you want later on. You deserve as many degrees as you want. You deserve however many properties you want. You deserve everything, but you have to take responsibility and take control of it now instead of having someone else try to help you do it later on. Okay. So with all that being said, I think I also have the pleasure to bring it back to Emony, right? To just close with some exciting news. I hope you enjoyed my tips and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Traylon. That was absolutely beneficial, even to myself. I am still taking in that advice. And along the lines of financial opportunities, we want to announce again a wonderful collaboration between Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman and the Village of Women, our 2021 scholarship. And so you will receive an email that will have the application link included for each and every one of you to be able to apply for a scholarship. And so a big part of saving money and really reaching your goals is being able to be resourceful and take advantage of opportunities like a scholarship. With that, I will turn it back over to Tara. And we have scholarship recipients who are here. Their names are Olutoyosi and Safia too. So if you would like to find out more about the scholarship, they are past recipients who will let you know about their experience with a Village of Women and Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman. Tara, back to you.
Thank you, Emony. Thank you, Traylon. Yes, it has been a speedy 2 hours. This has been phenomenal. I could not have asked for more. I know this is not what we intended and what we planned for, but here we are in this virtual space and we had over 100 young women and individuals that were able to join us today, some that had never been to this conference. We have people all across the country from various locations, so very thankful for that opportunity and this experience. I dropped into the chat and that you may have seen a couple of resources that Traylon has provided for us. I've also placed in the chat our evaluation form that, if you could please take a moment to fill out for us so that we can grow and get better and to hear about your experience. Look forward to an email coming from myself and Marsha and the rest of the TGTW team about other opportunities, other resources that have been shared, and making sure that we stay connected. We'll do this together. Thank you so much for all the pearls of wisdom that have been shared. Thank you for joining us and sharing with us in this experience. Have a wonderful day. And until 2022 for our 9th annual Today's Girl, Tomorrow's Woman conference. Have a great day.